The next question we're going to answer is, why does the priest get the remainder of the grain offering? Wouldn't that go back to the Israelite who presented it? Why does the priest get it? Let's go back and answer that question. We have to go back to the beginning of things. Oh my gosh, this video is already so long. Let's go to the Genesis of Levi, the beginning of Levi. Every priest is a Levite, but not every Levite is a priest. So Aaron and his sons were the ones that were to be priests because God anointed them for that purpose. If you remember, God called Moses and had him do an 8-day ordination over them because they were to serve as priests. But then we see where you have other Levites that came into the picture that weren't of the Aaronic priesthood. I have a visual for you, and the visual is going to show you the difference between the original priesthood made up of Aaron and his sons and the addition of Levites. So I want you to remember that when God called Moses to deliver the children of Israelites from Egypt, he made Aaron and his sons priests. And these priests would have acted upon God's behalf and done all the services and everything. However, we're seeing that after a while, God added to the Aaronic priests the Levites. And he said he gave the Levites into the service of Aaron and his sons. So now we have a larger body of people serving as priests. And we know that there were a lot of activities there and a lot needed to be done. So when taking the Levites and adding them to Aaron, then we're seeing where it was a more enduring covenant, because then we're seeing that more people would have come in. There's only so many kids that Aaron could have. And so by adding the Levites, we're seeing a more stable order being emerged from that. So in taking the Levites and adding them to the Aaronic priests, then we're seeing that it is more a stabilized priesthood. When the book of Peter says you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, now you understand the context. The same letter to the priest, which is the book of Leviticus, it is actually a book written to you, the modern day priest, because each believer is a priest in their own home. And so he says you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Remember, the nation is made holy when priests follow on their responsibilities, or priests respond well to their responsibilities and adhere to all that it dictates. So here we are seeing, when you say that you are a priest, you have to make sure that you are keeping the covenant of salt with your God and that you're being that light. You have to know God. The priest had to know God and his ways, and so able to instruct others. The same way, you have to know God and his ways so that you can instruct and help others. Genesis 29:34 says, Leah, this is Leah now. She conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And this is how Levi came to be. Now, we did not see the manifestation or the unfolding of that prophecy, because it was a prophecy that she's speaking over these sons as she's having them. She's speaking prophecy. And so we're seeing the manifested word come out in Exodus 29, Exodus 32:29. And we're seeing where after the whole rebellion with the golden calf, Moses comes down and he's livid. And he says, who is on the Lord's side? Come to me. And only the Levites came over to him. And he said to them, strap on your sword and kill all your other brethren. And 3,000 fell. And from that day, we're seeing where the Levites set themselves apart, becoming attached to God according to the prophecy of their mother, Leah. So we see where the Levites in this act separated themselves from sin and onto God. And this is how Levite walked in the prophecy of being attached. Now, in Numbers 3, 6 through 10, we're seeing where the Levites are actually chosen by God. And it says, bring the tribe of Levi near and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister to him, they may serve him. And they shall keep his charge and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation to do the service of the tabernacle. So they're serving in the tabernacle. And they shall keep all the instruments of the tabernacle of the congregation and the charge of the children of Israel to do the service of the tabernacle. And thou shalt give the Levites unto Aaron and to his sons. They are wholly given to him out of the children of Israel. And thou shalt appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall wait on their priest office, and the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. So here he's saying he is now separating to himself the Levites, and they will serve with Aaron as priests in the tabernacle. So he's giving Aaron and his sons help, basically. He's calling the Levites to help the Aaronic priesthood. So he's telling them to help them. So now they're being helped. They have sufficient staff because it's a lot of work. Now, why would God appoint the Levites? I mean, we saw the prophecy and we saw the manifestation of that prophecy. And we're seeing all of this, but why? Here's God telling us in Numbers 3:13. He says, because all the firstborn are mine. For on the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn of Israel, both man and beast. Mine shall they be. I am the Lord. So we're seeing that God had taken to himself, after he would have taken all the firstborn of the Egyptians, he had consecrated to himself the firstborn of all women of Israel. Anything that parts the womb belonged to him, the firstborn. But God is saying, I am now replacing that with the Levites, and I'll take them for service in my tabernacle to me. So now these are now set apart, holy unto God, instead of the firstborn. So if you remember Samuel and Hannah, Hannah prayed for a child. This would be her firstborn child. And in exchange, she gave him to God to the service of his people. This would have been what every Israelite woman would have had to do, give the child for service to God. And this is how the original plan that was in place would have played out, with every Israelite woman giving their firstborn to God in his service. Firstborn males. However, when God chose Levi for himself, he basically replaced the Israelite children and instead took the tribe of Levi for himself. And this is how the Levites came to become the priesthood. And that's why God chose the tribe of Levi. Numbers 3:6. But I want you to see that it started with a prophecy where his mother said, now my husband will be attached to me. The husband is God. He is the husbandman. And she's saying, now my husband will become attached to me because I bore him sons. And now we're seeing where the Levites in Exodus attach themselves to Moses, because he says, who is on the Lord's side, come to me. And they came to him, showing that attachment. Are you following? He's showing the attachment. And now God took them in place of the firstborn. Now, you want to remember that the Levites are the ones that did not get any inheritance. When all the children of Israel came into the promised land, we're seeing that they weren't given any land because God said he will be their inheritance. And so as a condition of being their inheritance, God would provide for them. And now you're seeing where the covenant is between them and God. This strong relationship needed to exist where there is trust, where there is faith, because their very meal they can't eat if God doesn't provide it, because he is their inheritance. All the other Israelite tribes they could go out and sow and reap and harvest and all of these things. They didn't have that. They had to depend solely on God for their next meal, for their next, if God don't come through, they're gonna die there. So they had to have a strong commitment, a strong relationship, a strong trust in God, because He is their inheritance. Everything that they would need would come to them through God. And it's the same thing God is saying to us. I am your inheritance, because you are set apart by God. And He's saying, I am your inheritance. So when the Israelites would bring the grain offering and all the other offerings and all this stuff, God would take a portion of that and give to the priest. And if you remember, the grain offering, God would only take a handful of that. And it would be 10 days worth of food. The grain offering sometimes would be up to 10 days worth of food, which is, I think, an ephah. And He would only take a handful of that with all the frankincense, and He would give the remainder to feed His priests, His Levites, because He took them for Himself. These are His special children. And so we have covered why the Levites, we have covered the covenant of salt, and we have covered the memorial portion, what it means. Just to recap, God wants all the frankincense. All the frankincense belongs to God and God alone. He made that abundantly clear. God wants you to offer your offerings to Him with a consciousness of the fidelity pledge that you're taking to Him, because you are making a covenant with Him. God wants you to be the salt of the earth, performing in the earth the way that He tells you, because He says, obey me and I'll be your God. God wants you to know that you are a priest and He is your inheritance. God wants you to know that the grain offering that you bring to Him, your praise, your acts of devotion, all of these things that you want to pour your heart out to God, He wants you to know not to add any honey. It doesn't have to sound so sweet. Just be real with God. God doesn't want you to present any leaven to Him. He cannot accept an offering that has leaven. So if you have an issue, if you have a squabble with a neighbor, a friend, a brother, a sister, if you're not viewing someone as precious as God is viewing them, if you're not thinking about every soul that you encounter to be a blessing to them, if you're not being the bigger person and even sacrificing your ego to make amends with your brother, you are offering leaven in your worship. God doesn't want it. Remove the leaven, remove the honey, be real. Have some time of introspection. Ask God to show you, and He will help you to come into alignment with Him. God wants you to know that He is still that God that went to Cornelius in Acts 10 and used him, who was a pagan. God wants you to know that you cannot be the salt of the world until you understand the covenant of salt. God wants you to know that He is with you, and He wants you to know that He loves you, and He wants you to know that you're precious. If you're not a believer at this time, I encourage you to leave a comment so that we can contact you and pray with you and add you to our community so that you can grow with us and we can share Christ with each other. I thank you for watching this very long video, I'm aware. God bless you. Share with someone that you know. Shalom.